All right, I'll count us into the audio. 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome to episode 110 of the Narcissistic Music Disorder.
Scotty, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Great to be here today.
It's a magic day for us here at the
It
LMD
is.
podcast. And I thought about this now since we organized it. Oh good, there's low disk space on my computer. That could die. We all know that could happen. But I've been really excited about this, and I've been concerned because what are we going to talk about on the show if we're not stroking this guy's ego? He's sitting right here, so it's going to be a little awkward. We have a special guest today. Is that right, Scott?
Yes, from Bombshell Crush, former Fox, the Larimores, Great Affairs, Mr. Denny Smith.
Oh, welcome, man.
Oh, that's me. Sorry.
First
Denny,
mentioned,
thanks for doing this.
First mentioned, I believe, on episode 35. The episode was called Current Guitarist Obsession.
Oh, wow. And
that
whose
is where,
list was...
that is where you and I, John, I think, discovered that we both liked the Great Affairs.
Do you remember, Scott, how you connected with the Great Affairs?
I heard them on my dad's satellite radio, something from 10 and 2. And I wrote, back then I put a note in my phone, and I, went home and bought 10 and 2, and I've been a fan ever since then. And then when that episode, you were saying to me before we started recording, like, oh, I've been jamming this Great Affairs record. And I said, yeah, I bought it back in October when it came out or whenever, and I haven't spent a ton of time with it. And then after that, I was like obsessed with it, and because I couldn't get off 10 and 2.
I'm trying to think of how I connected with this. And Denny, you won't remember this, but I believe it was a comment you made, Denny, on like a post about, or by even, Donnie V from Enough's Enough.
It was something about Enough's Enough, I remember. Yeah.
I'm like, this.
That's likely. That's highly likely.
This cat likes Enough's Enough, so I'm in, of course, which is one of my favorite bands. So welcome to the show, man. Thank you for all you've given us as far as great music. I know I've certainly, we joke around, but I'm sure there's some legal stuff where, thank God we're on video. I'm sure I'm not supposed to be within 1,000 feet of you.
I have had I have consulted with a couple attorneys.
The restraining order's been lifted for the day.
But it's so expensive. It's so expensive to get one of those in place. So
exactly.
I'm older now.
Hey, man, I'm keeping my distance. So, Scott, what's our topic today with our guest here?
It's our favorite British albums that are, in our A rotation for the most part. This has been like a year ago. I messaged Denny and asked him about this, but I was waiting for the Zoom that you were so stubborn about.
Dude, okay. I don't want to get in. We have a guest. Let's not get into this right now. Okay, let's not fight in front of our guest.
So our favorite British albums, yes.
Man,
I wish I put that year to use, man, because I crammed for this the last 3 weeks. I didn't know when it was really going to happen.
Oh,
so I had it. It was in the back of my mind that whole time, but this was way harder than I thought it was going to be. I don't know how you do this every week. I really don't know how you guys do it.
Let me ask you this, Denny. We were talking before you got on and before we started recording about this. For me, the weirdest thing is it's like how obsessed our British musicians were with blues, with American blues.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that weird thing. The Americans give them the blues. They take it, kind of tweak it, send it back to us. We eat it up. It's the weirdest thing. It's like, all these young kids are obsessing with Beatles and Stones and British Invasion stuff, which is kind of blues based, and then Cream and stuff like that. And yet in our own country, it's what is it? It was Muddy Waters, right? Who's painting chests when the Stones come, and these guys are like having Howlin' Wolf on Hubaloo with them or whatever. It's like, for me, you guys, of course, this is not shocking to anyone. My list of my favorite British albums, there's some metal in there, man, because for me, as a metalhead, the new wave of British heavy metal was big for me. That was a huge thing for me. All that, all the early British.
Do you like Iron Maiden?
Do I like Iron? Who the hell is Iron Maiden? What is that? Do I like Iron Maiden? Yeah. That, that's again, that kind of thing. You know what I don't like? You guys know this about me too. I'm not like a prog rock guy. That's not my ride at all. But yet I like Maiden, and there's a ton of proggy Maiden. There's a lot of Iron Maiden.
Oh yeah,
real proggy to me. So, well, let's dive into it. Let's have our guest open us up. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely.
Denny, what's the first album you got on your list?
Well, so first off, these aren't any specific. Like this isn't a ranking. These also aren't like what I think are. These are just 10 of my favorites. I'm not
good. Me too.
This is the best.
Me too.
Like definitive. Okay, so I had from 1971, Badfingers Straight Up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Why wouldn't I have Badfinger?
I mean, it didn't have all the hits on it, but it did have a couple of big ones, and it's pretty much untouchable front to back. There's not a bad song on it, And
maybe one of you guys can share this with me. And I have kind of a rough skeleton of how it kind of worked, but there's a Beatles Badfinger connection with Apple Records too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. They had
Paul, right?
Yeah, Paul wrote "Come and Get It." The first, I guess, originally they were called the Ivies. I don't know what used to have a book about them. I loaned it to my ex-guitarist, and I've never seen it again. So I would consult that under normal circumstances. But he somehow, I think they'd signed the Ivies. There may be an Ivies record out there somewhere. I feel like there is, but he ended up writing that "Come and Get It" song, which sounds just like the Beatles. I, for years, thought it was the Beatles when I was a kid. I didn't realize that Badfinger was even a thing. And that was the beginning. But then I think George Harrison was producing that record too, possibly. So there's a George Harrison and a Paul McCartney. Wow. Connection somehow. So, but they stood on their own, man. They were great writers on their own. "Come and Get It" was, far from their only hit. It was just their production.
Yeah, Baby Blue's great.
Oh, that's a great tune. Baby Blue's a great tune. I love that.
That's on this record too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Day After Day. I mean, they're also one of their history. The fact that there's never been a movie made. Two of these guys killed themselves.
Right. Right.
Their story is so tragic.
It's prime for a rockumentary, isn't it?
Yeah, it truly is.
So is anyone else, before we move to the next one, is anyone going to mention it, or am I going to be the guy who has to say it? I'm the guy who mentions the Lillian Axe cover.
Lillian Axe cover.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, there you
Thank
go.
you for saying, because we're all together on this little podcast. Nobody's going to jump up and mention the Lillian Axe cover.
I don't think they wanted to do that.
They didn't want to do it?
I don't think they wanted it on the record. No, I think Stevie Blaze was like talked into it by the label or something. Weren't they on IRS?
That was a single. Something? That was even a single from the record, wasn't it? They had a video for it.
Yeah, they made a video with the old lady, and
I don't remember the video. I remember being in a band that, like,
it was on the Poetic Justice record.
Yes, that's what Denny had just mentioned. Yeah. And I remember being in a band with older cats, right? And they're like, we're doing No Matter What. And I, of course, knew the song. But I was like I'm apt to do. I'm playing the Lillian Axe version, and
right.
Older cats in the band, like my dad, like when I did the gig with my dad and played Pretty Woman and buried the tremolo arm on my PV tracer, and my dad went, "What are you doing?" There was a moment of that for sure. Like, dude, what are you? Well, and I think somewhere, and it's been so long since I've heard it, but I think in the Lillian Axe version, like during the what we'll call the, I guess, the pre-chorus, knock down the ogre, there's like some guitar thing, kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
So you can imagine.
Well, it's too great. I mean, John Sturr, I think, was in there at that time, and he was from Stiff.
Yeah, there's some killer stuff. All right,
they just formed that band from Stiff, and then they got Ron Taylor.
Yeah, when MCA signed him originally, they
love that
piecemeal deal. Yeah, I remember.
I love that we can take a side road on
Lillian Axe.
Ron Taylor and Darren DeLatte are still doing stuff together.
All roads lead to Lillian Axe. Great. All right, what do you got, Benting? What's your first one?
Pablo Honey from Radiohead.
All right, man, you guys go ahead and talk.
It showed me where they were going and what the Benz was gonna, could be, and what it was. And
what's the big Radiohead song on Pablo Honey? What is it?
Well, there was You, and Creep was the big one, though.
I guess it's Creep. Is Creep is the that one. I like.
But
that.
Anyone could play guitar, rip chord. They're all what, they showed you what and then they just got a lot of people like, later stuff. Okay, computer. And I just, I check out a lot of that stuff. It's just too computery for me. I like more Johnny Greenwood jamming on guitar on the first two records than they got too weird. And
they got a little blip and bloop going on.
Yeah, they got
little.
It sounds like movie treatments or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like digital Pink Floyd.
Right.
Weird kind of.
Which is the name of my next band. The other thing about, so that radio had the creep tune, the junk tune, right?
Yeah.
So back in the day, I sold my rack, and guitar players have had that moment where they sold their rack, where we changed. Yes, Denny Smith is amongst those who went.
I sold to clarify, I sold the contents of my rack. I could not unload the rack. It's still in my basement.
Right.
Just the contents of the rack.
I keep my golf clubs in it now. I sold my preamp and all the stuff to this kid, and his band covered that creep tune, young kid. And I remember whatever my Digitech Valve effects, some sound in it had the killer. I mean, he sounded great. Kid goes to join another band and ends up playing with someone out west, and I feel like it was this dude. You guys are going to laugh at me, but I think it was like Pete Yorn or something. Kid ends up playing guitar with Pete Yorn, which was cool. And he made my Digitech Valve effects sound cool, which I could never do. I could never do that. So Scott goes Radiohead. You know what? I might take some heat for this. I feel like I don't know you guys' stance on this band, but my first one is definitely Maybe by Oasis.
Oh.
Yeah. Debut.
And dude, here's why. Is it made sense to me. And I think the first song on it might be Rock and Roll Star.
I think it was.
Yeah. Which has the other thing, and we've talked about this with Gaslight Anthem. I'm just not, and I do it all the time. I rip stuff off all the time. But I'm like, if you hear something that sounds like you ripped it off, I'll tweak it so it's not, not as noticeable. Oasis and Gaslight Anthem. I mean, that opening riff is Bang a Gong, jung, 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 and it's just, that whole record's killer. It's snotty. It's
cocky.
It's super cocky. Great guitar sounds. I love that it's I think it might be, again, Rock and Roll Star has the amp noise, which I always love, and the other thing is that record, I tell my son all the time this, and I'm sure you guys have heard the story, that it was mastered like super loud.
Yeah.
So when you went into like a pub in England, song, Oasis song was 10 dB louder than everything on the jukebox in England, which is killer. And again, you got Beatles, that much Beatles in you, that much Bowie, Stones. You got John Merchant every time.
Did you find that record in real time, or because they didn't really truly blow up until that second album. Did you go back to that, or did you find it?
I got it from Todd Long, my buddy Todd from Ghosts of Sunset. He went all in. He had this phase in his life. We were hair metal guys. And I remember when he clicked over and he was listening to a lot of like Pistols and punk. What is that?
Is that a
box?
box?
On my list. I have the Oasis. I even have the little gold singles boxes. I was so I'm right there with Todd on that. Man.
Well, yes. So he went all in, and then I definitely Maybe really got me. I just loved it. Yeah. I've got a DVD where they break down every song. There's a documentary. There's this whole bit. I just think it's killer, man. I love all those songs. It took me a second, I guess, to get used to the vocal delivery, and now I love it.
Yeah.
Is it my imagination? That, which is a little bit, Johnny Rotten too, right? He had that kind of same delivery. So yeah, that was mine. What do you got next, Denny?
I'm staying in the 70s for this one, 1973. And this one was tough because it's a compilation, and I felt weird about putting it on there, but it's the first thing I ever got from them. Not the first thing I ever heard, but the first album that I ever actually owned or stole. Sladist.
Oh, wow.
Their first best.
Why wouldn't I have Slade?
Well, I poached this from my Uncle Don's record collection just because I wanted to hear original versions of those Quiet Riot songs. They're
Right.
both
Right.
I didn't
Yep.
know I'd fall in love with the whole thing. I had, and I also didn't realize how much I had heard like "Run, Run Away," but I had
Oh, I
never
love that song.
Kevin Dubrow thing together with, with Noddy Holder's voice. I didn't realize that he would sound so similar. Because on
Right.
that track, you don't really notice it as much, but when you hear the original versions, you're like, man, this is like beyond Blueprint. I mean, they followed this to a T, short of the
To a
guitar.
T. To a T. And it's funny because Slade, I'm glad you said Run Runaway, because I think the album was like Keep Your Hands Off My Power Source or Supply or something.
Power Supply, yeah.
And that was a huge video, right? The Run Runaway video was on
Yeah,
MTV. I love the song. Nobody ever talks about it, but I love the song. I love Run Runaway.
Well, I don't know if that was considered a weird phase for them, because remember it had that weird like a drum loop through it. It wasn't even like a real drum track.
It was 80s.
Like a
it was
like a Lindrum kind of synth thing going the whole time. None of their other stuff sounded like that
No.
at that point. It was real raw rock and roll.
Oh man, all those original versions of the Quiet Riot tunes, of course.
Britney Fox.
The Britney Fox cover,
Oh, yeah.
Goodbye to Jane, which is killer. I like Stomp Your Hands and Clap Your Feet. That's a great tune. Yeah, what a killer band. And you're right, Kevin Dubrow. I did not give him enough credit for, I don't think he gets enough credit. I think he had a great rock and roll voice. And if you watch the 83 US Festival and you watch the Motley set and you watch Quiet Riot set, those are two different bands. Quiet Riot sounds like a high school band. I'm sorry, Motley sounds like a high school band. Quiet Riot, I mean, Kevin Dubrow could deliver live.
Yeah, he already had
I think
the stuntman thing down. They all played their asses off. Motley
Right.
shambles on that thing. That was
terrible.
They'd like
Terrible.
to erase that from history, but
well,
yeah,
I
Quiet
mean,
Riot was they were they kind of got a lot of that due to his personality probably too, but they really did take some lumps. But they were a great band in their prime, without a doubt.
They pop that
sure.
that obviously the 83 record is Mental Health is
yeah.
we talk about it all the time. Jumped over Thriller, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Thriller. And
not bad for a band that couldn't even get a record deal for 10 years.
Get a record deal, dude. When they had Randy Rhoads in the band. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
How do you not? Yeah. And some of those two Japanese Quiet Riot albums are cool too. I really like, my favorite Quiet Riot song of all time, I think, is Slick Black Cadillac. I just think that's a great tune. Yeah. I love that jam. So,
same.
Yeah. Killer Slade. Great pick, man. Great pick. Great band. Still like, there was another single off that 80s album, Run Run Away, and there was another one too.
My Oh My or something.
Yep.
Is that the kind of a ballad kind of thing?
I think that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah. All right. So who went next? Is it you, Scott, or me?
Yeah, I think so. Everybody Wants from the Struts.
Oh, I'm hot on the Struts.
Is that the second record?
That's the first one.
First record?
Yeah, it's hair metal, it's Queen, it's the Stones, and then they went, I think, on the second record, Young and Dangerous or something like that. I think Butch did that one, and they sound like an arena rock band on there.
Yeah. They still have a big sound. They've kind of gotten away from the big guitar thing in these last couple releases.
They have a new record right now, I think.
They do.
I just heard a couple singles, and you know who was one of their studio guys was that Tom Bukovic guy that I
he's amazing, man.
He plays on that record, on the new Struts record. Yeah, and there's a cool video on YouTube. I think it's called like Old Man Charts or something, but it's him sitting with those guys as they run a song down, and Tom is charting it, and you can tell that the kids in the band are like, I guess that's right.
Yeah, they have no idea what's happening.
And Tom's like charting this thing out, telling them, okay, you're modulating to C in the chorus, and the guys are kind of looking at him like, okay, dude, okay, old timer. Yeah. But then he puts great guitar on it and creates parts for these guys.
Yeah, he's a monster, man. That guy's
cool.
Some other kind of creature entirely. I don't know how he does some of the stuff he does.
And one of the best YouTube channels ever is his. Homeschooling.
Yeah,
killer. It's
that first record too, isn't Scott? Isn't that first record the one that Greg Alexander from what were they called, the New Radicals? Remember that?
Yeah.
No way.
one huge.
Yeah.
I think co-wrote a bunch of that stuff on that first record, or maybe wrote one of the hits.
I think so. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know
The
that.
first time I heard them, I thought, man, this sounds. I thought that's who it was, but it was clearly not that guy's voice. But it had this very similar
Yeah. Luke Spiller's got
compositional properties to it.
Wow,
yeah.
cool.
Two of my favorite British bands both have singers named Luke. But
that's funny that because was the New Radicals, was that don't forget you got the music in you? Is it
That's
that the new?
Yeah.
I love that. I love that song. That's a great song. That's a great song. It was just
Yeah,
playing at work the
I
other
think
day.
he kind of retired from doing the performing and recording thing, but I think he still does a lot of. He's a ghostwriter type, you know.
And I feel like, and I'm gonna get it wrong. I know I'm gonna get this is too deep of trivia, but I feel like Susan Cowsill or someone was in New Radicals.
No, it's
So,
Danielle Brisbois from Archie Bunker.
thank
The
you.
girl from Archie Bunker's place.
Thank you.
Yeah, because she had a solo album out. I think Greg Alexander produced. She had a solo record that was called "Arrive All Over Me" in the 90s.
wow.
Yeah,
It's killer, man.
I wish I had still had a copy of that, but I used to have the promo of it because it came out when I first worked in the record shop. And
Oh, that's great, man.
I remember I didn't get it at first. I was like, oh,
Now I get it.
Yeah.
It's a thin line between clever and stupid.
It definitely is. That one was really towing it too. I'm not really
Yes. All right. Well, my next pick is I just, I think it's a little too obvious, but I didn't think I would like this record the way I ended up loving it. But it's Never Mind the Bollocks from the Pistols, of course. Everybody hears the Sex Pistols. I didn't think I'd like it as much as I did. The thing I also didn't understand about this record is just how orchestrated it is. Like, you think punk rock is the Ramones. The Pistols, if you listen to that record, the guitars are they're cleaner than you think they are, and there's more parts than you think there are. There's groove to it. Like,
play, man, that guy's is no joke.
Oh man,
way better players, obviously, than their live representation was not.
Well,
not the same thing, but
that's the thing too. Is we have to always remember Sid was a caricature. He was not a musician. He was a representation of the punk ethos. Supposedly, what he couldn't do was play bass.
Yeah,
he couldn't play bass.
Clearly.
But the cool thing about that Pistols record is, I mean, everything from, Pretty Vacant. I mean, all the stuff. Anarchy's on there. Holidays in the Sun. Again, the Skid Row cover of that is killer. Off the Stairway to Heaven album, which was like some drugs and alcohol make a difference foundation.
Yeah, for the Rush, when that Russian,
yes,
Jovi Motley thing.
Yep.
Get Doc McGee off the hook for
trafficking coke, right?
So, yeah.
And the other cool thing is just, I try to tell people this all the time about this record, is the guitars are way cleaner than you think they are. They're way cleaner. And supposedly Jones said he was playing through like a Silverface twin reverb for some of that record that he had stolen from, I think, someone in like Bob Marley's band. Nice. Something like that. Oh, wow. He had stolen it. Yeah. So yeah, the Pistols for sure. What do you got next, Denny?
I've got another. This is a kind of a punk one too, but I'm bumping up into the 90s now. This came out in 93, and it totally changed my life. The Wild Hearts, Earth versus the Wild Hearts.
Yes.
I need to pursue. Everybody talks about the Wild Hearts.
This is the one you need.
All right. And what is it called?
Earth versus the Wild Hearts.
Yes.
And it's their first full length. They had an EP or two before that, but that's the first. And this is the first one that came out in North America. Did absolutely zero business in North America.
I like the one that at Fuck or whatever.
That's the one right after this. That is also, from start to finish. That is a.
Would you say that they have a hint of industrial to them at times?
They did a record. It's oddly enough, I just listened to this the other day. I had not listened to it in years. They did a record called Endless Nameless, where they did. It's almost unlistenable. It's kind of like if you took Ministry and put a distortion pedal on in front of it and ran it through the speakers. It is agony to listen to.
I thought some of
songs underneath it.
Yeah, I
But
thought some of the newer stuff that Ginger went like a little bit industrial or
he has a
something.
side project called oh, this is one of the few things from him that I did not buy, but it's like an industrial metal thing. That's his. Oh, it's got a
That's
really
just not,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's not really my thing.
no, but his output is so he's so
Because they're more
prolific.
like hair metal and power pop and
This record is most of their stuff up to a point was kind of it kind of sounded like Foo Fighters mixed with Cheap Trick
yeah.
with but his vocals are real gruff, but all the other guys have these like almost angelic singing voices.
Oh,
So the
cool.
lead vocals gruff, but the harmonies are sweet. And they do a lot of 3-part stuff. They're all great players. We played with them. They came here right before they ended up getting the Darkness tour after they got here. They booked a club tour, and we played with them in Atlanta with it was Bombshell Crush, the Wild Hearts, and this band called the Dragons, who were technically the headliner. Somewhere in the midst of that, the Darkness, I think, were returning a favor because they had let the Darkness open for them before they blew up. Put them on their first, arena tour here.
Wow.
Darkness were an arena level band, and so their bus was delivered to the. I don't know if it was brought to the show that night, but the other band, the headliners, in this piece of shit panel van with all the gear, 4 guys and their manager / roadie guy. The Wild Hearts have this beautiful black bus, giant trailer with their amps and stuff and all their gear. And I felt so bad for the Dragons. Like they're going to go on and finish their little measly tour, and the Wild Hearts are driving the next day to wherever to play some arena. It was
the
like,
Enormo Dome with
Yeah.
the Darkness. Yeah. Killer. I got to check them out. I'll
yeah,
have
there's
that.
a greatest hits, John, that has like a heart with an arrow going through it. That's a good place to
that's
start.
a great place to start.
All right, I'm in.
Call.
You've hooked me. You've hooked me. This better not turn into a Radiohead thing. All right. What do you got next, Scott?
What do I have? Up All Night from Razorlight.
I got nothing over here.
I thought they might creep into your list.
They're catchy and poppy and really cocky. I think the cockiest and, in my opinion, one of the best debuts since the Oasis debut. But their singer is just as cocky as Gallagher's.
Are they still active? Are they still active?
I think so. I don't keep up with them as much as I do other bands. But I mean, there's so many of those that sound like the that style, like the Dum Dums, and there are.
Yeah.
So
I just told my wife last night that I thought for sure this will be the one that gets me laughed off of the show if I pull this Dum Dum CD. No one's gonna, even you guys aren't gonna know what that is. And here we have already talked about it. Not even
that's never gonna happen with Scott Benting in the room.
So
you just aren't gonna.
My love for British pop, I was around. Yeah, I knew about Oasis at the first record because I love British pop so much. So I just followed all that stuff. But it started with the Stone Roses, which I don't have on my list because it's too obvious for me. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I want to talk about other stuff.
But see, here we go. Like I constructed my list from regular listening, right? This is the stuff I regularly listen to. And
me
like
too.
the Stone, I mean, I would love to say Stone Roses and be cool for you guys, but I'm listening to Exile on Main Street way more than I'm listening to Stone Roses, right? I'm going to throw a couple things together in the interest of time and in the fact that these are blueprint records, I call them. Like these are the British blueprint records for me. And of course, I could pick anything, but certainly Exile on Main Street, you guys all know I love. Anything from the Zeppelin catalog, but I'll use Zeppelin 1. And of course Revolver from the Beatles. For me that covers it all. If you like, I like the Oasis stuff. That's Revolver, right?
Yeah.
And I like I like the Four Horsemen, and that's Exile. And I like Wilco, and that started as Exile and turned into Revolver. And I like Zeppelin, I like any bluesy rock and roll stuff, of course. But without those bands, without your Beatles, Stones, Zeppelins, and then I have one more on my list. I'm going to throw it out right now is, of course, the first Sabbath record. Those I don't know how it became that these are prototypical records. I mean, these records are still being made today by bands who are claiming to make, myself included, new records, right? Like, hey, here's my greatest new bluesy rock and roll record by like the Dead String Brothers, who I love the Dead String Brothers, but they're making Exile on Main Street too. You know, we're all kind of, everybody thinks they have a Sgt. Pepper's in them, or everybody thinks they have a, an Exile on Main Street in them, I guess, where we're bluesy and cool and loose. And so those,
I think that stuff gets underestimated a lot of the time too. Like you said, people think I could, this is going to be my version of this. And it's like, man, those things weren't created that way. I mean, that stuff happened organically. It wasn't it didn't get machined together like people would do it today.
Like I would do it now, right?
There's no bullseye people were shooting for at that point. It's just like, this is what we do. It's not a aspirational, like, man, I got to make one of those. It was just, they're just making great records. I mean, that first Sabbath record, you can't tell me there was a blueprint going into that album. It's barely recorded. It's barely produced,
and yet I just listened to it because my son got a record player, and of course he was a Sabbath fan. And it's like, it's still, I mean, it's 2024 and the first Sabbath album is still brutal. It's still brutal, man. And those are kids too. And where, like, the Beatles, for example, I'll use the Beatles. There was even in their most psychedelic and experimental, there was a lightness to their music. And I mean, in almost mood sometimes, the Beatles, they started out as, they were, this poppy girl group almost, right? With these four fellas. There's nothing. Sabbath just doesn't stop. They never go, ho, let's get some positivity in here. Sabbath didn't do that. Those guys just, and it sucks. It sucks because Ozzy Osbourne, thanks to what I'll call overexposure to some degree and age, has become this other thing. But back then, that voice is killer, man.
That's
killer.
That stay too long at the party thing. At a certain point, you start becoming almost like a parody of yourself.
Well,
it's really hard to avoid that because you can't stay cool forever. I mean,
you can't.
People that can. I mean, maybe Sam Elliott or something, but I mean, there's very few other examples in music where you can be cool into your 70s and 80s.
Right. It's hard to do. It's hard to not, like you said, become a caricature. So yeah, I had the Zeps, the Stones, the Beatles, all classics for me.
But then you also have the problem, Denny, of what Hayes Carl said: in this line of work, no one retires.
It is a legit thing to be navigated. It's hard to decide. I mean, you don't have to worry about it because you're going to get pushed off the map.
Right.
Well, you want it to happen or not, you're gonna get put out to pasture.
It's like
don't.
It's like the movie This Is 40 with Graham.
That's
I'll have our Billy Joe to come along and save
it. I can't imagine navigating the 40, 50 years of music world. I don't know what that would be like, and I'm sure I won't have that opportunity. But for a Stones or Sabbaths and Zeppelins and these, I mean, can you imagine? We were talking about it a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Who writes the first Black Sabbath album and goes, well, I'm going to have to sing all of this in 50 years, 60 years, right? You're thinking, well, we got to be able to deliver this live on this next tour, and there might not be another one,
Yeah.
So amazing.
I mean, obviously, ultimately you should always aim high. I mean, that's if you're just going to kind of, well, I'll just lob it over the fence. I mean, why bother, kind of thing. So I get it, but you're right. No one is sitting down and doing the math on that and what the physical ramifications of that are going to be in even 10 years. You don't think about having to hit that whatever high note, like Ann Wilson,
right?
She didn't want to sing alone in the first place, but now she's got to get up there and do that high note. And
right,
I'm sure some nights she goes for it, and some nights she says, "Ain't happening."
I call it ducking. I like to duck those notes a little bit.
I prefer the Coverdale.
Oh yeah, exactly. And the still of the
So your mind tricks you into thinking it's still there, but it's not happening.
It's really not there. No. What do you got next, Denny?
This is a real oddball. I should pull this one out. I actually put it on the turntable last night. Zodiac Mind Warp and the Love Reaction.
Yeah, man. Yes.
Tattooed Beat Messiah, 1988.
Yes.
Wow.
88. So that's 88. You talk about weird bands, right? There's one of them. There was a whole, and you know who's not on my list, and I'm embarrassed, and maybe one of you guys have it, but like I don't have any cult records on here, and I should.
I had it and I crossed it off.
I did the same thing. I bumped it to the honorable mention category.
Yeah. So what was the single on that Zodiac Mind Warp record?
Well, they had multiple. Prime Mover was the big one.
Prime Mover.
And then they had one called Backseat Education, both of which had killer videos on MTV.
Yep.
That did get played quite a bit on Headbangers Ball, and I think they might have toured with GNR briefly.
That could be.
They opened for somebody in the States. Never really caught on over here. I think they were bigger in Europe because they've got a couple other records over there. You can find this thing. I have a greatest hits CD, which is essentially this record with one extra track on it. It's just
right.
Same cover, I think. But they were, dude, if Rob Zombie didn't steal his whole shtick, his whole look,
look, yeah, right.
Looks just like the guy. And they had, dude, I had to type these out. The dude's band name, Cobalt Stargazer, is one guy's name. Flash Bastard, Slam Thunderhide. How do you fail? How do you miss with names like that?
You can't. You can't. You are destined for greatness.
They somehow managed. They did not
go
North America.
Exactly. Somehow those names didn't score.
It still holds up though. It's still a solid record. I love it.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's another there, and those bands popped up all the time back in the day. You know that they'd come out, they'd have get a video on MTV, and I would buy in, right? Like I bought in Primal Scream when I saw them. You know, I saw their video for Get Your Rocks Off, which I thought was gonna be a cover. I thought it was going to be a cover of the Stones tune.
Yeah.
So, you know, certainly them, you know, a lot of those British hair, glam, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, the London Choir Boys, a lot of that stuff, it just didn't, it was like it was a counterpart to an American, like they had the Crows. They were like the British Crows. And they both kind of blew. Actually, Ginger from the Wild Hearts was in the Choir Boys at one point.
I love that.
So there's all kinds of weird, 6 degrees of separation stuff going on with these bands, but they didn't. I mean, the fact that the Cult managed to connect here, especially they literally changed their entire aesthetic from album to album and still managed to get a hit off of almost every one of them was amazing. But most of those bands just couldn't ever get until Oasis, man. I feel like most of that British stuff beyond the 70s, I feel like the 80s were like a lost decade.
It was because America was just hitting everything.
Breaking through, no.
Yeah. I mean, we had Whitesnake. Whitesnake would technically be a British.
Yeah. 70s band almost.
But it wasn't until the Americanized version of Whitesnake hit here that it was a real, I guess slided in technically too, but a lot of that stuff just never really took off.
Yeah, because there was what, 3 or 4 albums before Whitesnake hit?
Oh yes, yeah, for sure. And when they
nothing like that, there's those are straight blues rock records.
I was just gonna say they look like a blues rock band, right? I mean, think about it. They look like a bluesy rock band back then. And then we get the MTV, Whitesnake, which I still love. Don't get me wrong. I do. I love all that stuff. But a lot of those bands, I still think the Choir Boys are, I mean, and I love the Black Crowes. Everybody knows that. But the Choir Boys, man, are a fantastic band. And Spike's a great singer. And it is, for me, just like Exile, just like the Faces, they're just giving it back to me for my, I mean, you watch that early Chris Robinson, you see Spike on stage. I mean, that's Rod Stewart Faces. That's what that is, and it's killer. And I love it. So, yeah, great pick. Now I forgot who that was your pick, right, Denny?
Yes. It was.
Yes. All right. What do you got, Scott?
I'll throw a couple together that are kind of similar. The Kooks have a record called Conk, which they recorded at Ray Davies' studio called Conk. and that's phenomenal. And then there's this band I love called the Arctic Monkeys, and their first
Yeah.
record is called Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not. And I just love the guitar in both of those records, the tones, the punkiness, the Brit poppiness. They're just both fantastic records.
I didn't
And I
realize
the
the Arctic
Kooks
Monkeys
is
were even British. I thought they were a New York band, so I must have missed the
the
memo on that.
Kooks are the Kooks are one of my favorite British bands. I love that band.
And I'm
Do
familiar with
you
that to some degree.
do you think that what we call Brit pop, right, which is a genre now, is that's Beatles? Wouldn't you
Yeah,
agree?
it's
That's Beatles
Beatles.
stuff.
It's all Beatles. It's all Stone Roses. Yeah,
It covers a lot of bases, though, if you think about it,
it
because
does.
there's a lot of those bands that had like one album that came out here and kind of had like, it had its 120 minutes hit or whatever.
Yeah.
Then the follow up did nothing. Like the label was obligated to put one more record out in North America, and they just didn't do anything with it. I felt like a lot of those bands, they came and went so fast, man. And you see them. There's a lot of cool documentaries that detail the ups and downs of that. They just,
Stone Roses documentaries, killer.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
really good.
there's
Well, they
one
tore
that
themselves apart. Some of these other bands, just the business just did them in so quick. Like they're so singles driven over there, I think too. There's a
yeah.
lot.
Right.
Whereas here, it just that doesn't. This is I feel like maybe just the North American market is an album market, or at least it was in the
It
'90s.
used to be, for
But
sure.
in England, it's not like that, man. They were so heavy on the singles thing. It's crazy. I used to love getting those imports with all the bonus tracks, all the B-sides and stuff.
right.
Yeah.
Never see that stuff here. That was
Yeah.
not the thing here.
And that's that's the and I'm sorry to always defer to these guys, but that's the Beatles again are where that change happened. I mean, that the Beatles are putting out albums. Albums start to become important. But even over here with with our West Coast singles, we were still pushing Beach Boys singles and Jan and Dean singles, and it was all singles driven.
Yeah.
And in England, we were getting, then we were starting to get singles by bands that sounded like the Beatles or that you would confuse with the Beatles. But I think there's something about, and when I write my book about drugs and music that I'm really excited about, and I've talked about forever.
I keep hearing about this thing.
I know it's going to be great.
So many details. Somebody's going to jump on this thing sooner or
It's
later.
going to be
making a note right now. Actually,
it's going to be.
You thought
great.
the Arctic Monkeys were from New York?
I didn't realize they were British. I don't know why.
Oh yeah, they're from Sheffield.
Say what?
Oh yeah,
they're from Sheffield.
Oh, home of Def Leppard.
Yeah.
Well, and you guys know I'm moving on to my next pick, and I'm glad you guys mentioned it because I'm always going to mention Leopard's Pyromania.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And for no other reason, if you hate Def Leppard, it's okay to hate Def Leppard, but that's a game changer too. That's a production game changer. That's how albums work game changer. Pyromania was like almost like a quote unquote hair metal Sgt. Pepper, where everyone thought they had a pyromania in them, or to even a greater degree, Hysteria, which I prefer Pyromania.
Getting re-released, isn't it, Denny? Pyromania, like a special edition.
40th anniversary thing that comes out this
40th anniversary. 40th anniversary.
Yeah, how does that make you feel? Great.
Horrible, just horrible. But again,
there's no way I didn't put that on my list because I felt like it was just too obvious. Plus, I would just sit and gush over it for 30 minutes. But
I will say, never has. I mean, nothing out of place. As a guy who loves sloppy bluesy, I mean, you listen to Exile and there's stuff out of place, right? They'll be out of tune bits. Leopard took that late 70s, early 80s arena rock approach, the Boston approach, the Journey approach, where these records are constructed everything's in place, and then you get a Mutt Lange in there who his vocal backup stack is, again, he killed it with Shania, he used it with Leopard.
Oh yeah, man, you know immediately that you either know, especially in that era, you knew it was just him, but now that people have figured out the breathy trick, all that stuff, that it's a lot easier to do that stuff but he was doing that stuff to tape, which is mind-boggling. And but those arrangements are, I mean, that stuff's
beautiful,
pure.
beautiful. And I mean, this is horrible to say. Boy, horrible to say. But Leopard really changed for me when Rick Allen lost his arm. The sound of Leopard changed then because
tell me this then. Okay, so I still am. I've never been 100% clear on. My understanding is that's still a Fairlight on
yes,
Pyromania. That's not
Pyromania is a drum machine. I thought it was it the Lynn drum machine.
I think it's a Fairlight or it's or one or the other, but it's similar hardware.
I just had this discussion with someone who didn't believe me, but that album is a drum machine.
Yeah, they didn't have time.
Well, and Rick Allen, I don't think that he could give Mutt Lange what he wanted.
Right.
Which is Mutt Lange couldn't have any movement because he was placing things so precisely. I don't think he could have any swing to anything. Whoever programmed the drums for that, and I don't know who it was. I'm sure it wasn't Mutt Lange. Whoever did it did a killer job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you listen to Pyromania,
I never even considered it being a drum machine for years.
I didn't either.
Years.
No,
I didn't either. I didn't. And I wonder if there's, I mean, that's 82, 83 era. I wonder what technology looked like. I mean, I know those drum machines, I don't believe analog wise went out to separate tracks. Do you know what I'm saying? Where the toms were on a track.
I don't know how those machines. I've never used one of those. I mean, I've seen the digital recreations of those machines. I've never actually played hands on it, so I don't know what the outputs look on one of those. But
whoever did it did a kick-ass job. And if you listen really close with that in your head, there are drum parts that for the normal drummer, the sticking would be a little
impossible. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But there's again,
two hits on the hi-hat going while there's a snare.
Well, there's a snare. Yes, exactly. Where we've all done that. We've all demoed up a song and went, well, no one could play that fill because you'd have to have right. But yeah, I love I think Pyromania is still, I mean, you'll still see people will still dance to Rock of Ages and Foolin' and all the hits, and then the quote unquote B tracks, are killer too, are better than the singles.
Under Fire,
oh man,
all that stuff. And Stage Fright. There are no weak tracks on
Billy's
that.
Got
Not
a Gun.
Single.
Awesome. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great song too. Yeah. What you got next, Denny?
This one comes from 1986. A little bit of Iron Maiden trivia attached to this one, though. Really deep trivia. Cutting Crew broadcast.
I'm ready for your trivia.
Okay,
I'm dying right now.
I saw these guys play the Heart of Illinois Fair. I don't know. I have to do the math on how old I was at the time. They opened and closed with "I Just Died in Your Arms," just to piss people off that walked out after they played the first song. And their keyboard player's name was Tony Moore. He played keyboards in Iron Maiden at the very beginning of Iron Maiden's existence. He answered and there's a Wikipedia entry about this.
Holy crap! Really? That's cool.
Briefly, Iron Maiden's keyboard player in the early days.
Wow.
So, yeah, but I love this record, man. It's not a. It was. I mean, it was popular, very successful. It had two hits, two big hits, two minor underperforming radio singles, but it's a killer album, man. They're such a good band.
Wow, that's a great connect. That's a Benting level connection you just made. What do you got next, Scott?
I have the Stereophonics, Performance and Cocktails.
Excellent choice.
And you say excellent choice, Denny, but there's a lot of Stereophonics fans that don't like this record. They think it's too. A lot of people think there's a lot of vanilla on this record, and I think it's a guitar-heavy record, and I love the raspiness of his vocals on this record. It's like I don't know who produced it, but it's like they wanted to make this band an arena rock band or something with this record, it sounds like to me.
They're a tough one to pin down, man, because I feel like Kelly has just got a zero shits given kind of attitude to how they do their stuff, because those records jump around, but that, like stylistically, man, they'll make a totally moody, a whole album that just does nothing that should be on the radio. Clearly, that's like, what was, I mean, But that
Lately,
one,
I've been on Scream Above the Sounds,
oh,
but
that's my favorite one. I love that record. But the Performance and Cocktails, man, that is loaded with singles, man. That's got. I think they were aiming for the radio because
it
that was
seems like it.
early enough on too, and that really was when they kind of broke. If you think about it, that was kind of the beginning of their hit era. I mean, they had that brief moment here, even where they had, they had two or three, at least here in. I don't know how they were everywhere else in North America, but I saw them here. They played
Yeah,
Rivers.
that's the record I discovered them on, so that's why I dig it so much. But the first one from like '97, that's good. Is it what? Who Goes There or something like that?
With the white cover, the weird.
Yeah, the white and blue and
Yeah,
red
that's got some
cover.
great songs on it too.
But yeah, lately Scream Above the Sounds has been my jam, and this one, Performance and Cocktails, I just can't get away from it.
They've got a few that just I almost forget they even came out.
It seemed like the bass was turned up on this record too a bit.
Well, the
It's
whole
more out
album is
front on the
more
mix.
rock sounding. This is really big.
Yeah.
It's a big record, and his, like you said, he went really into that Rod Stewart almost kind of vocal thing, which I
Yeah.
think is cool because it really suits his voice. He doesn't do it as much anymore.
No.
But yeah, man, that's a great call, man. I had them in my alternate list because I didn't know I couldn't pick one album. I was like, I just no, I can't,
Yeah.
can't do it. But that would have been in the top three probably if I'd had to pin it down.
Awesome.
All right, what do you got next, Denny?
Let's see here. Elvis Costello, Brutal Youth, 1994. My voice just gave out.
Yeah.
It was it's this record right here.
Yeah. Yep.
It's the first Costello record I ever owned. I worked in a record shop at that point, and there was a girl that worked there. Thank you, Kim, who turned me on to them because she knew I liked Enough's Enough, and she knew I was into the Beatles. And she said, "You probably like this guy," and that was the album that was out at the time. There was a promo on the shelf. I was like, "Yeah, I'll take it home. Let's do it." And it blew me away, man. I had no. I mean, I'd heard of Elvis Costello, and I'd heard Costello's songs. Like Veronica had been on that was a video thing.
Which is great.
But this album, just because of it being the first one I ever heard, like really digested, I know it backwards and forwards, man. I listened to it a million times, and it's still great. And it was Mitchell Froom produced it, so it's got this really kind of quirky, crowded housey kind of sound and production to it. It's just great.
Man, I struggled. I looked at a ton of Costello stuff because I love Elvis Costello. And it's funny. I remember the Enough's Enough connection too, because I loved Veronica. I remember even the late 70s stuff, even as a kid. I remember Pump It Up and Radio and all that stuff. Obviously Veronica was my first big thing. And the other thing, my favorite, and if you rewatch it, you'll appreciate this. He sings to the original track. He sings. There is live vocal in the video. Go back and watch a video with headphones on. So the song's playing, and there'll be lines that I don't know if he recorded over it for the video, but when he sings, there's a second track of him like, what goes on it is the pretty little. It's his voice. It's the coolest thing.
I never
check it out. And again, all the Costello stuff. It just, I mean, everything's there. There's reggae. There's the poppy. He loved country, and you guys know I love country. So you get like I have his Nashville and More bootleg, which has him doing Patsy Cline covers. George Jones. He does one of the best "A Good Year for the Roses" I've ever heard.
There's a great, if you ever get a chance, go
Indoor
on
Fireworks.
Look up. Oh, that's a great track too. Look up there from that same time when that record was being made. There is a very short documentary on YouTube that was shot in Nashville, and that was back when down like Broadway, where the honky tonk star was rough, rough. And I think they're like Roberts or something. Having
cool.
There's some really great footage in there. It's totally worth watching just to see the band's reaction to. I'm sure by that point they'd been everywhere probably, but you could tell they were so enamored with
the culture
doing that recording, but also like where are we kind of thing.
Right.
It was sketchy back then. Way sketchy.
You can't say enough good about Elvis Costello. Can't say enough good. So in the interest of time, I'm going to throw a few things out here. I'm going to just throw a couple more out. On my metal side, I'm any Priest record. I went Screaming for Vengeance. We all know I'm going to do that. Again, Priest, Maiden, Leopard, Saxon, Angel Witch, all the new wave of British heavy metal stuff. I'm into. I'm that was my ride, of course, which is weird because I'm such a wussy and I like such poofy haired wuss music. I don't know how I ended up liking Maiden and Priest so much, other than Judas Priest in my high school was that's top level stuff. Screaming for Vengeance 83, everybody. And they came to town. They roll into town on this World Vengeance tour, and come on, dude.
Well, that was when
what
Priest played everywhere. You know that
they did, dude,
nonstop back then. So
and a lot of those bills too, ironically enough, were Priest Maiden bills. Those were killer. I mean, they were still Maiden would tour with Priest when Paul was still in the band. You know, the Killers tour and some of that stuff. So yeah, Scream for Vengeance. I also have, because I want to be that guy. I have the Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, of course, because for me, that also became when it was okay to create this other thing you were when you were making music. You could be that. We all know David Bowie was good at that reinvention idea, but without Bowie and Ziggy Stardust, I don't know that you have, I don't think you have Lady Gaga. I don't think you have those artists who have those personas. I don't think you have Madonna, where you could be these different things. And Mick Ronson. I mean, what do you? That's guitar for me. Yeah. That's what guitars are supposed to sound like. And I heard Bowie in all my hair metal that I loved so much. You know, they all the Sweet and Bowie and Slade and I mean, who am I kidding? Those things I came to because I was such a metalhead and such a, the first Motley album. That's that. Quiet Riot's Slade. It's the Pistols.
That backtracking thing, man, when you're trying to figure out where it comes from, can reveal some crazy shit, and it's beautiful, man. When you do find that stuff, it's like, man, because it's like the Costello thing, man. By the time that album came out in '94, he had 20 other albums, so I had 20 albums of homework to do to go back and fall backwards through. I bought all that stuff,
and other character. I mean, Costello's another example. The angry young man Costello, the esteemed senior artist, the stuff with Jailhouse Tears with Lucinda Williams. He, Costello, again, to go back to him, is that Nashville and More record, he, the cover of Psycho from the dude my dad played with, from Jack Kittle's version of it, is just great. And again, I love that those artists, because I did.
Is that an outtakes bootleg or something from the?
I should grab it. You should. I got it at a record and CD. I'll have to get it to you. It's killer. I got it at the record and CD collectors show. And the other thing is, you knew it was good because it was in that plastic that you opened to get it out.
Oh, it was a high quality bootleg.
It was the high quality shit right there. Yeah. So that's the that's actually the conclusion of my list. What do you got, Scott?
I got a couple here. Of course, my dad got me into the Sweet. That's the beginning of my love for British rock right there. Desolation Boulevard.
Yep.
Everybody knows all the songs, from it. Ballroom
they were
Blitz
heavily influenced by Crocus.
The 16s and Solid Gold Brass, all those songs. I mean, it's different than the British version. The American version is a different track lineup, but all that stuff from the Sweet. I love everything. Action, a single that wasn't on that record, but they were so killer, and it just got my love for British rock started, and I had to have more after hearing that on 8-track. My dad played me that.
Didn't he say something to you too? Like, oh, if you like this band.
I was listening to Cinderella upstairs, night songs, and he's like, if you like that stuff, you got to see where it started.
And then he showed me. I remember getting that best of or greatest hits CD. That was the first thing. I had to learn something from them. I can't remember what it was for some band.
Yeah, that weird colored, like purplish
Yeah,
One,
with the
yeah.
logos.
It's got
And
Love Is Like Oxygen on it, and
that's the
Fox
one.
on the
Yeah, that
Run.
was the
And yep.
only greatest hits you saw everywhere for the longest time when you couldn't
Yes,
find those
absolutely.
catalogs.
Every
But I
truck
remember
stop.
listening to it the first time and thinking, every one of these songs, I can tell you at least 2 other songs that were ripped off from
Yes.
that
Yeah.
song. There's a
Yep.
Motley song over here. There's
Yep.
a Princeton song over here. I mean, every single track on there had been purloined by
Lifted.
some other artist. You know, some chunk of the arrangement had been taken. And sometimes it was the main riff of the song. It's like, man, that's
Yeah.
Kickstart My
Right.
Heart. I mean, there
Right.
was so much of that. But those arrangements are so meticulous, and it's all crammed in these little short. There's so much happens in these little short. They're pop songs.
Yeah.
That's it.
That intro to the 16s. I mean, how many people have ripped off that
Yeah.
kind of, you know, it's,
Man, that's killer.
and then,
That's
the best album the Doors never released, Echo and the Bunnymen self-titled album.
you love them. You're a big
I
Echo
got to
fan.
get hip to that stuff, man. I don't know
I do
much
too.
about it.
And then I got one more that's my favorite of all time. But if you want me to say
Hey,
it
you
now,
guys, I might need to pause us a second. We literally just maxed out my my hard
memory?
drive space. Yeah. Give me 1 second, and
Okay.
I don't want to just kill the show. So you guys talk among yourselves. This is always good stuff.
Yeah.
Be
So-
cool, man. Be fucking cool.
Denny,
All right,
that
What's
new
the-
record, that what made you decide to put Over the Moon on there?
Man, I just didn't. When we did this isn't going to be in the show, right? This is
Yeah.
Okay. So when we did that Laramore's version, I had my buddy Stacy play piano on it. From Sin Shake. I can never say their name. Sin Shake Sin. He used to be in this band called Lovers and
This
Liars.
will be on the video portion, though, just
That's-
for anyone who cares.
That's fine.
Don't blow your
he-
band up on our account or
he,
anything. Frank over.
he played the piano track on it, and Joshua wanted he thought it was too busy.
Okay.
So I told, and I liked it, but it was a co-write, man, and Josh was that thing was his baby. He was doing all the production stuff.
I love that song.
I wanted him to be, you know, we had a compromise on it, and so Stacy shot us over another version of it that was a little, you know, slightly dumbed down, and Josh used kind of a composite of the two, which I thought was really cool. But I wanted, and Kenny had played on it on both versions of it. We already had the drum track, but I wanted to get, after it had been written, I heard all these other little parts and stuff vocal parts that I thought,
Yeah.
and also that was cut before I'd had my surgery.
Okay.
I wasn't real happy with the vocals on it.
I love that one. That's I mean, Stevie is fantastic too. I can't stop playing that one lately.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that was a last minute addition. That barely made
I
it.
mean, if the 1970s was a person, it would be Kenny Wright.
I'm going to see him for lunch today. I'll pass that. I'll pass that on to him.
I'm sure he won't be offended by that.
No, he won't at all. He fully embodies that and embraces that.
It's killer, man. I mean, that I love the record. It's When Love's the Drug is so fantastic. Yeah, it's.
Thank you, man.
I'm getting people hooked on it. So.
Well, we're slowly but surely gonna do some shows this year and get out and play some more of that stuff. A lot of it's really tough. It's one of those paint yourself into a corner things. We don't use tracks, so
yeah,
a lot of that stuff is really tough to pull. Stevie in particular is really hard to pull off live.
Yeah, with all your guys' backing vocals in there, and
even just this, I don't play keys live either. So some of that
okay
stuff, we have to find ways to recreate that on
the
bass, and they're not always, you know, sometimes you got to compromise with that too. It's like, that's as close as we can get. It's going to have to do, this is going to be the punk rock version of it kind of thing. But I struggle with that because I don't want it to be a half-assed representation of the song, but some things can't.
Hey, fellas, I'm back, and I think I can roll us into this. We just finished talking about Echo and the Bunnyman, and we'll 3, 2, 1 this and wrap this thing up. Ready?
All right.
Yeah.
Get hip to that stuff, man.
I do too. You know what, you guys? I'm sorry to say. Yeah, we have run this thing into the ground, I'm afraid. Let me think what I'm. You know what I'll do? Maybe I'll pull the audio off this video. That's what I'll do. I'll just take it off. So let's continue on here.
All right.
So
And I will have to edit somehow.
yeah,
I
the
will be
Echo
the
record.
mukbang of this. Yeah.
The Echo
So-
record is I don't think it was the band didn't like how it sounded, or Will or somebody didn't like how it sounded, but I love that record. And I mean, if you're a Doors fan, it's a great replacement for the Doors. It's a continuation.
Which album is this? Their
The
first
self-titled one from
Self-titled?
1987. Yep. But I mean, all of them, you hear hints of Morrison in there, and it's not quite the baritone of Morrison, but you hear the vocals. And Ray Manzarek plays keys on Bedbugs and Ballyhoo. So
Oh wow, that's wild.
And
But,
that's
you
not
know-
what I would have expected them to be. In my head, that's not what they are.
No,
Like that's
yeah.
not the I wouldn't even
They're
think
very-
of the Doors.
it's a sullen band like the Doors,
Gotcha.
they're not happy. They got songs like The Cutter, they got songs called The Cutter.
Right.
The Killing
Say no
Moon.
more, man.
But
Feel
my
good stuff.
favorite is, Disintegration by The Cure.
Oh yeah.
That
love
record
The Cure.
is a warm blanket for me. And that record is a record for me where I can put on that record and a pair of headphones and disappear.
Wow. Yeah.
I
that's-
I would put on a pair of headphones and turn up something else super loud to not hear that when I was younger. Because my sister was obsessed with them and listened to
Oh
them
yeah.
constantly, and I grew to despise The Cure as a result, and then kind of, acquired a taste for them later.
Right.
I really had to get past that. I really struggled to get past that, and we had to cover. I think we covered In Between Days in a band, power pop band I was in years ago, and I was like, man, I love this stuff, but I hated them for a solid decade. Just really, really did not like them. So I'm gonna write Disintegration down too. I'll revisit that.
You got
So,
any
Denny,
more, Denny?
What else you got?
Well, I'll cram a couple in, and then I'll give you I'll just the last of the real ones that are on here that I actually had notes on. We already talked about the Dum Dums.
Oh yeah.
Deep into that. I love that first and only.
Great
There is
record.
there's a B-sides collection that came up on I think Spotify and Apple Music and stuff have it now too. That I think it's
okay.
the recordings for the record that they didn't release after that. And if you don't have Josh Doyle's record that he put out after that, he won that Guitar Center competition here where he got to do a single.
Okay.
He ended up doing a whole record. He lives here in Nashville. He's got a bunch of stuff out that's really cool. I had the Who's Next.
That's on my honorable
simply
mentions.
for the 746 mark of Won't Get Fooled Again and the greatest rock scream of all time. I had obviously the second Oasis record, What's the Story, Morning Glory.
Yep.
And then my honorable mentions. But my last real record is 1972. Jeremy Asbrock, that plays for V-Rock Residency and Ace Frehley and stuff, turned me on to this guy about 5-6 years ago. Sensational Alex Harvey Band.
Oh yeah.
The album Framed. I think it's their first or second record. Man, the songs are cool, super weird, zero regard for being normal or mainstream. And the guitar player, this guy's name is Zal Clemenson, and he kind of would paint himself up like a mime. Dude, his guitar tone and the stuff he's doing you just got to listen to it. It's like, what did I write down on here? Oh, I said it's like AC/DC on acid, kind of. It's like this weird, like Bon Scott era AC/DC, but trippy, and it just has to be experienced.
Wow.
It's just
Yeah.
one of those things that's so cool, and all their stuff is cool, but the first couple records in particular are really, it's fascinating stuff. Totally worth checking out.
Killer.
Sweet.
All right. Well, Scott, I would say we have a dream has come through for us, right? I mean, truly, we got Denny Smith on the podcast. Denny, thank you for being here so much, dude.
Clearly.
The internet.
Clearly he'll do any
exactly. We
podcast.
literally, my computer, the coolness, my old ass Dell computer was like, it's too much for me. This is too cool. Denny's here. I'm gonna freeze. No, again, as fans, we just thank you so much for being here. Love everything you do. Just know you're making records for us. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a fan of the podcast, man. I listen to every episode.
Thank
we
you.
are huge
But
fans.
my lawyer
of
tells me I
yours.
should take notes. My lawyer says I should take notes, and anything
You're gonna
that
want every mention. You're like, oh yeah, Merchant mentioned me
That's
again.
the
Oh
document.
shit, he emailed me. He emailed me shortly after that. Yep, I've got it right here. It was on this
Denny,
tape.
promote anything you have upcoming.
We just got some shows coming up with the Great Affairs, and then I'm also doing I've resurrected a version of Former with
Cool.
Billy Baker and Henry Go, the original guys, and Corey Rizzo, our guitar player, is playing in that as well.
Nice.
So we might do some shows with that this year. I don't know if we're going to call it Former, but it sounds real cool at rehearsal.
Nice.
Sweet.
And then just the Great Affairs is going to be doing some. We've got a couple videos that are in the works that aren't done yet. One hasn't even been shot. The other one we're finishing up, and then out playing some shows. We get shows on the 16th and 17th of this month, and then we're going to Alabama in April. And I wish I knew the rest. That's
That's all the
Well,
part
we'll
you
put
need
that's
to
the
go.
full extent of my knowledge. And then I have
We'll put a link.
my childhood band. Childhood sounds weird, but Fox, the glam band I was in high school,
Saw this.
is getting an official release. It's
I
being
saw this.
by the one and only Anthony Fox right now is remastering it.
Yep.
Is
Killer.
CD out, and they're releasing a video, and
Killer, man.
that's weird. That's really
You
weird.
play guitar on that record, correct?
I just play guitar and sing. I wrote most of the songs, but which is not something I'm terribly proud of in retrospect. But it'll be cool. I mean, it's not gonna we're not gonna get any Grammys, that's for sure. It's a little on the embarrassed, a lot of fire and desire going on. You know?
All right.
Fire and desire. So.
Well, let me go get some of my spoken word pieces that I have.
I've heard a couple of those. They slot right in nicely.
I just it was art. You guys can't appreciate it. My art was deep. A lot of influence there. So respect my art. That's all I'm saying. Scott, you got any words for us to depart on today?
Love has a nasty habit of disappearing overnight.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Denny, thank you so much, brother.
Peace out, guys.
Thanks, Denny.
See you guys.
See you, everybody. Thank you.